Greetings, YouTube. This is Fifth. I'm very happy to be joined once again by Roger, a good friend of mine. He's actually appeared on the channel before. So we're very happy to have him back. Roger, thank you very much for making time to speak with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you. It's something that's very important to say, and appreciate you making time in your life. I know you've been very busy, and this takes effort, so thank you.
All right. Yeah, we take time just because we feel like this is important, right? We feel like this information is important for people to get.
Especially this video. We have some very important time-sensitive information to share with your viewing audience.
Absolutely. So let's get right into some of it. Roger, I remember, or I know that for the last several months or so, we've been corresponding in regards to the response that you've seen on the video that you put out on my channel the time that I interviewed you. And you had some thoughts that you wanted to express regarding that.
Yes, I really appreciated the comments on the video. I took some of those to heart. We always appreciate constructive criticism.
Sure. But
the thing I appreciated the most was the conversation that was happening. Someone would have a question, and then others would answer that. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that in the sense that there's some things that are going on that I really can't talk about in detail. And I thought I'd give you an example. With an abuse survivor and the family, there needs to be a safe environment. So abuse survivors need to know that areas of their life that they want to keep private are going to be kept private. And if your viewers had a chance to watch the PBS segment about the Reveal News, you noticed that the abuse survivor, her face was blanked out and her voice was disguised. And that creates a safe environment for any abuse survivor to come forward in. So when I'm vague about something or I don't go into details, I really appreciated your audience filling in for that and saying things that kind of bridge the gap.
Sure.
And that's very much appreciated. I wanted to mention that there's a scripture that says to the effect, you don't want to crush a reed or put out a candle. And I have had experiences in the past where people committed suicide. And we don't want to say something in a video that's very depressing to somebody or that would cause them any more injury. So we're very careful about how we say things and what we talk about. So I have that going on in my head. Mm-hmm. I try to filter what I am saying. And so what we're going to try to do, because we have so much to say, we're going to include links and we're going to mention things that they can do further research on, which is really important. We're trying to start a conversation. We hope that other bloggers and YouTube videos, they pick this up and they talk about it. So the potential is there. And your audience showed that they have those skills.
That's a very good observation that you made. And I understand that you've also been involved with an initiative that has to do with trying to enact legislation or affect legislation related to child abuse and reporting child abuse incidents. And you were mentioning to me that recently you actually had the opportunity to appear before what is called a subcommittee on sexual harassment, prevention, and response. And this was an informational hearing in Sacramento, the capital of California, where we are. And the title was Best Practices for Changing Culture on Sexual Harassment. That's just an unbelievable opportunity that you had to actually speak in front of some people who are potentially decision makers involved with this legislation that you're trying to have enacted.
Yeah, in the 2 months or so that we've been going to the Capitol, mm-hmm. we've never really been able to have a one-on-one with a senator or an assembly person. Mm. So there was about a dozen that we could take the opportunity to speak to them.
That's great.
Yeah, it was.
So I know there's a lot of backstory. It's not like you just walked into a subcommittee. You just noticed there was a sign for subcommittee on sexual harassment and just walked in, right? There's a lot that happened that preceded that particular event. And from what I understand from what we were discussing earlier, is this actually goes back to the year 2011. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be a place to start in history, events that led up to me appearing in that committee.
Okay.
And if we give you the backstory, your audience will be able to see the importance of what we're trying to do in Sacramento at this time, mm-hmm. because it's an ongoing project. And like we mentioned, there's some time-sensitive actions that we're going to talk about. But let's just give your audience a background so they can have the conversation that's going to be required
Great.
to bring about these changes.
Let's do it.
Okay, so along the lines of commending people that do blogs and YouTube videos, I can say personally that the Jehovah's Witness discussion forum benefited my wife and I. Going back to 2011, there was a discussion about when ancient Jerusalem was destroyed. And there was very intelligent people discussing that. There was a professor and people way smarter than me. And we really appreciated that because in those 2 articles in 2011 about when was ancient Jerusalem destroyed, those articles had so many references, and you could actually study the authors and where the information came from. It was a rare opportunity. And in those articles, there was a statement about a detail, should this word be translated to or for? And it made a big difference. And it was important to us at the time. I think the interest in it is not the same way it was back then, but that was a good experience for my wife and I in helping us to make our exit.
I see.
And then if you go just a little bit beyond that, we kind of explained in the previous video that I was involved in a child abuse case, and I gave a deposition in opposition to the Watchtower. So as you can imagine, there'd be a lot of events that would be taking place. I'm trying to sort things out. I stepped down in 2008, but the deposition isn't given till 2012, and there's a lot of behind the scenes. We had Watchtower elders or Watchtower lawyers coming to the congregation. There was people on the body that didn't know what was happening. I was one of them. And so I'm trying to get this information, and it's a contest. There's information being guarded. Well, a friend of mine that's an active witness, still is. I still consider him a friend. He just won't talk to me because I'm disfellowshipped, and
Sure.
You know how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this publisher came to me with a screenshot of a letter that was generated in the Candace Conti case. And I appreciated that because it answered some questions to me. It showed that there were elders on the Oakley body that were involved in that. And it showed me that I was being excluded.
And just for context, when Roger refers to the Oakley body, he's referring to, in relation to the Candace Conti case, her assailant was a man named Jonathan Kendrick that was in the congregation with her in Fremont, California. Now, after leaving Fremont, California, this individual moved to Oakley congregation, and that's where Roger was serving as an elder. So he is actually one of the elders that received the letter from the body of elders in Fremont saying that Jonathan Kendrick, this man who had sexually assaulted Candace Conti, was actually good with children. So he was one of the recipients of that letter, and that's something that he explains on Revealed News. So please continue, Roger.
Okay, and for those critical thinkers that want to verify all that, the PBS segment actually showed me reading a portion of that introduction letter.
Right.
And then if they really want to get into details and see all these letters, well, not all of them, but a good deal of them, Trey Bundy's reporting, he has those available online.
Great.
So people can get to those letters, they can see them, they can read them. And so it's a really good resource for background if you want to have an intelligent conversation, including if you want to go to court witnessing or you want to talk to your relatives.
Right.
There's details that you might not know you're going to use until you're having a conversation and you say, well, wait a minute, I read this letter. And so those details really help in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So we recommend you do that.
And we're actually, and just one more thing to mention, there are links underneath this video that you can click on that have the information that Roger is describing, and many more links that we'll be putting up.
Right, and I'm not going to go into details, but the YouTuber Dan Mira, shout out to Dan Mira. Thank you very much for your efforts. I really appreciate it. It helped me personally to sort things out. Okay, so I just wanted to make everybody feel that's having conversations in whatever way they're doing it. It does make a difference, and it is helping. And it ties in with that committee hearing because this is all about changing culture. And people should watch that whole 3-hour hearing because they had 4 presenters that were like front-line soldiers dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace. It was great. And I sat there trying to tie in our bill with what was being said, and that's part of what resulted was that little clip that you showed. But in our conversations, we'll be able to talk to anyone and say, yeah, this is about a culture. This is culture change. And so it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not just the Catholic Church. It's all these institutions. And it's all how undue influence tries to protect the appearance of the institution, whether it's religious or a business. And it all ties in. If we can change that, that's going to improve things in the sexual harassment area and in the reporting of child sexual abuse.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that although the initial interest for yourself and some of these others may have been the problem within the Jehovah's Witness organization, this actually extends to a lot of other areas, the workplace and political circles and things of that nature that you mentioned.
Yes. And the more that people look into this, I'm sure that they'll agree with me.
Absolutely.
So we're taking it out of the realm of Jehovah's Witnesses and we're expanding it to the entire culture of California, which could extend to the other states,
of course,
which also could extend to places like the World Court. So these issues aren't just specific to California, but our efforts are.
Okay.
So we're going to address the viewers, what they can do in California at this time soon. But let's go back to the background.
Okay.
What led up to this. So let's go to before 2012, and we know that we're going to go to trial, and I'm actually working with an attorney, and I think I've already given the deposition, but now we've moved on to preparing for the actual trial with the jury. So we're thinking this is going to keep going, but what happens is the judge dismisses it with summary judgment. But we don't know that now. So I'm spending a lot of time. A third attorney has been added.
Wow.
And that attorney's assignment was to talk to me to try to understand, and it's good to use this word, he needed to understand the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses. And he was struggling, and we were spending lots and lots of time.
It's hard to understand, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. To talk to somebody that has no knowledge of Jehovah's Witnesses,
Yeah.
it's like you're talking an alien culture.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
You don't talk to your parents because, that's hard to explain.
Definitely.
So he had the idea to ask me if I'd ever read Joe Anderson's letter. And I didn't know anything about Joe Anderson's letter. And I said no. And he says, I'm going to send that to you. So he emailed it to me. Well, it's literally 5 pages. The 5th page is not very much, but there's 4 full pages in Joe Anderson's letter. And I reviewed it myself, and I said, that's an outstanding letter. But at the time, before I reviewed it, I just remembered how it made me feel. And the way it made me feel was I was doing the right thing. And what Joe had said in his letter was so to the point and so articulate, it encouraged me at that moment. It gave me a boost. It said, you're doing the right thing, keep going. Maybe 10% of my feeling was embarrassment because here I was in 2012 and Joe Anderson wrote his letter in 2002. But it was the same issue repeating itself. And so I wasn't alone. It was something that he was an elder. His letter was a letter of resignation. And he was resigning because of the way his wife, Barbara Anderson, was treated, but also because of his knowledge of the policies of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I know you're going to include a link. And if we have time, we'll go back and read some of the excerpts, the high points.
Sure.
But anybody that's going to be interested in activism or advocating, whichever word you prefer, I think all of us, that should be required reading because it's just as applicable today as it was in 2002. So it shows the struggle. It shows that people need to know things that were hidden from us.
Right.
Okay. So we'll move on. So once the trial was over, it got dismissed with summary judgment. I had an appreciation for what I had been reading online, and I never took the time to write Dan Mira, but I did take the time to send an email to Barbara Anderson's website, Watchtower Documents, and I thought that was the end of it. But she took the time to write me back, which surprised me. And that event started a long working relationship, and I consider myself friends with Joe and Barbara Anderson. And she's doing so much. She's goes back to, I can't remember what date, but everybody remembers her appearance on Dateline. But she was doing things before that. But that's one of the high points where she got disfellowship for causing divisions because she went on Dateline. And Joe's letter is saying there's no scriptural evidence for that. And he's talking about how many times the Bible writers would say something important. And it was all about that. So it's a good to review what Joe said. Well, when we struck up that friendship with Barbara, we actually arranged to meet in Las Vegas. We spent 3 days with them, had a lot of fun.
Great.
In fact, Barbara and I are supposed to have a contest, a redo of that. We started walking faster, and she's fast. That lady is fast.
Is that right?
So I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Karen was bending over laughing.
Yeah.
And so we kind of make a joke. We're going to have a rematch of that. Going through, I forget which casino it was, but it was hilarious.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah, I would like to see a video of that. It's great. Anyway, they're good people. They're good mentors. Mm-hmm. They put up with me a lot. And that's still going on. And I know she's talked to you.
She has.
And I know you're kind of getting in the network. And we're glad to have you. And we're going to look forward to, many more collaborations.
I appreciate it.
But anyway, we got to move on. We got stuff to cover here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is what happened. Barbara has formed a network. She's known all over the world. And so people call her, people write her. And there was this event or this person that wanted to get an investigative reporter involved. So he sent out all these documents, and Trey refers to that as a investigative reporter's dream.
And that's Trey Bundy from Reveal News.
That's correct. And so he got in touch with Barbara Anderson, and their office is in Emeryville. That's the Bay Area. And I live in the Bay Area. So she said, why don't you talk to Roger Bentley? And so that happened. We met, we discussed, and one thing led to another, and that's how Trey and I got started working together. So the things that I was doing, working with Trey, the court things I was doing, all of that kind of came to the point where I gave everything I could give. And, what do you do now? That was kind of exciting, doing what I was doing is a little stressful, but I reached a point where I've done everything I can do. So then another event came up, and that was this event. I'm just going to read the title of it.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that. This dark print on the top. It is Trey Bundy bringing abuse to light, a convening to address the Jehovah's Witness child safety crisis. And that took place on Wednesday, April 26th, 2017. That was an inspiration to me. We saw the movie Spotlight. The producers of the movie were there. There was a question and answer session after that.
And for those who aren't familiar with Spotlight, would you be able to explain that briefly?
See, you could Google search that, maybe watch it on Netflix or wherever. Mm-hmm. That was a true story about the Boston Globe's investigative reporting reporters. They're called Spotlight. And they did the report on the Catholic Church's abuse problem. So that was a very big deal. Mm-hmm. And talking about Barbara Anderson, she saw that movie and it affected her so much. She said the emotions lasted for about 3 days because she said that story was her story. And the timing of it is very close. And if people don't know what happened to Barbara, you should become familiar with it. You should go to Watchtower Documents, read her story. But she was in the headquarters. She was working with the governing body in the research department. She contributed to articles, even wrote some that made it into the publications. Mm-hmm. And she came across the abuse problem and wanted to bring it out. And of course, like so many other whistleblowers, she ends up being disfellowshipped.
Of course.
So here was this event in London, and people like Mark and Cora Latham, John Redwood, he was there. Lloyd Evans, Karen Morgan, Candace Connie, Debbie McDaniels, Nick French, and other professionals. There was several speakers, and I should have counted them, but there's a couple of pages here of the speakers.
Okay.
They include, I'll just read some of the titles. CEO of the Investigative Reporting, Trey, the reporter, Kathleen Hallisey, Senior Solicitor, Erwin Zalkin, founding partner. I mentioned the abuse survivors that were there. And these are the people that had parts. And I think Trey purposely didn't use the word convention or assembly. He used convening. We had a barrister. Then we had, there's several lawyers. Oh, we had this individual that worked on historical abuse cases. And so he was hands-on. That was his position. He gave a little 15-minute talk saying that working on historical abuse cases actually statistically reduced abuse cases, and he went into those statistics.
Okay.
We had a barrister who practiced in Canada and England, and her presentation was about shunning and baptizing people when they're young and then disfellowshipping them when they don't agree with the religion. Mm-hmm. She feels that's a human rights violation. So it's her goal to bring that before the World Court, which is great.
Absolutely. Wish her all the success in the world.
Oh, yeah. And with the thing that's going on with Russia, see, there's a lot of research that people could do there. The Jehovah's Witnesses weren't just involved with the UN for 10 years. They're still involved in what I would call lobbying, the UIA and those kind of things. So maybe we'll put a link to a blog.
Sure, you can put that down.
That shows that Jehovah's Witnesses are involved politically. And so when you're going to Sacramento and talking to politicians, you better believe that they're in there somewhere. And they're either there themselves or they're there with another lobby. So I liken them to this little tiny bird that criticizes another religion. But then when a court case is coming up, they run underneath that bird for protection. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, you find out all these things are going on. That's why it's important that we become a spokesman, or we do the same thing we're doing, but to professionals and people that can change laws and juries. We go to juries in court, but we can do this with police, chief inspectors, and detectives. So all that's being done, even on these videos, sometimes the police are called, and I watch with fascination the way these advocates talk to the police. It's very respectful.
Absolutely.
And they do a good job. So anyway, there's so many more people. I mentioned the producers of the movie were there, and then Mike Resendez, the investigative reporter from the Boston Globe. So we had time to network with them, eat with them, talk with them, and listen to their presentations. So all of that came together to me to pose the question, what are you going to do from now on? And there was no real answer to that. So that was on my mind. So I was talking to Barbara, and she made the comment, yeah, it was like you were really sad. You didn't have any place to go. So Barbara introduces me to Robert Munoz Atkinson. And he likes his whole name written out. And you've talked to him.
I have.
And just a coincidence, when I went, Karen and I, my wife and I went to the Kansas County appeal trial in San Francisco, I shook hands with Robert. I didn't know too much about him, and we introduced ourselves. And he kind of went his way, and I went my way. But then Barbara says, well, why don't you two get together? You both live in California. Robert's been dedicated to trying to change laws for some time now. And you have to give Robert some love. I mean, that guy is very talented. He's very smart. If you go to the Facebook page, Scars, that's his creation. Everything on there is his. And it's we want your audience to go there. We're going to include a link.
Sure.
But we'll explain more of that as we go. But that's the network. When I mentioned network at the Capitol, I didn't really want to say Scars because I didn't really have approval of what I said. I kind of went out on my own based on what I was told by the staff member. And I showed you that email where he said you have to connect what you're doing with what's being done here.
And you're talking about a staff member that works there at the Capitol.
The one that invited me to go to that. Anybody in the public could go there. But he said, this is an opportunity for you to present to all these senators your idea, and it's your opportunity to connect it to what the hearing was about.
Mm-hmm.
And he cautioned me that they already have a full agenda. They already have quite a bit on their plate. But he said, that's the time to make your case. So I didn't use the word scars. I used network. And going back to Barbara and I've met authors, all these people I just mentioned briefly, that's the background. And that's behind why I said I represent a network of all these people.
Sure.
Another good experience, I'll just throw it in real quick.
Sure.
Barbara knows James Penton, the author of Apocalypse Delayed. And he was going to appear in court as an expert witness. But he was worried that his health at that time wasn't going to allow him to do it.
Okay.
So he wanted to know, Barbara suggested me, so I get this phone call from James Penton, and I'm reading his book.
Wow.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
right. Wow, that's right. So I got to have an hour conversation beyond. I would be willing to go. I couldn't fill in. I'm not an author of a book like he was,
Right.
is. But we got to comparing the causes, and I actually got to talk to him about comparative religion, because he's a professor, retired, of comparative religion.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I asked him about another book that I like. It's by Joseph Campbell. It's in the area of comparative religion, and he didn't hear of that author, which I was surprised, because I'll just throw in a side thing here. We like Star Wars, and George Lucas was mentored by Joseph Campbell. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why the first three movies were so enjoyable, because Joseph Campbell was into myths and legends. And the book I read and really enjoyed was The Hero of a Thousand Faces. So I was asking James Penton, author, about Joseph Campbell, author, and he says, I never heard of him, but I did because of Star Wars.
Sure.
Well, he's in Canada. I don't know. Anyway,
Okay.
He says, but I heard of the ideas. I heard of what he is trying to say. So anyway, authors includes James Penton. So all these individuals out there, they're out there, and they're all common cause. They all want to try to rectify the injustices that we recognize. You and I are living it. Barbara was disfellowshipped. James Penton was disfellowshipped. So we have all this in common, and it goes way back before 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Robert and I started to work together, and imagine somebody that was associated with Jehovah's Witnesses since the 7th grade.
Wow.
And now I'm going to go to the Capitol. I'm going to talk to staff, and if you go back to where you were when you were a believer, that was Satan. Satan's ruling this system, and those are
Definitely.
that whole thing's going to be destroyed. And you think about some of the art, you could see the Sacramento Capitol being hit by lightning.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going in there.
Right. To the belly of the beast, huh?
But I don't regard it as the belly of the beast now.
Of course.
It's they're people. And so he's now, we're just joking, I know these are trigger words, but I got my suit on, I got my book bag, I'm knocking on offices. Guess what that reminds you of?
Yeah, you have a lot of experience doing that, right? I would imagine.
But you know what? It came in really handy. I started feeling very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And again, apologize, but I really enjoyed the ministry when I was doing it. And I tell you the reason why, because I learned that if you give people dignity, if you respect their position, and you don't have to force them, you can have some very good conversations. So I was doing the same thing. And what happened is, as we were going along, we had an idea in our head. We were going to talk about statute of limitations. Well, we quickly found out that that's not a good subject to talk about. And we found that out from an attorney in our network that's really got a good heart. And when he talks to me, he's really kind.
Okay.
But he knows so much more.
So when you say it wasn't a good subject to talk about, based on our previous conversations, you were saying that people weren't very receptive to even having the conversation in the Capitol. Is that correct?
It was DOA, dead on arrival. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we adapted.
Mm-hmm.
And, Robert has done this for a long time, but he was still learning things too. So this is how SCAR's Facebook comes about. The staff was very happy to help us as novices. I mean, we just said we've never done this before, but they appreciated the importance of the cause. They saw the problem, and they're human beings. There's mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters. Some of them had relatives that were abused. We found people that connected with us emotionally. So we found that SCARS, in a way, is a cooperative project, including those staff members that were telling us specifically, you need fact sheets. That's what they call them. A brief explanation of what your idea is. We appreciate that they would be PDF. Mm-hmm. We like everything PDF. So Robert goes home and he bangs out 16 fact sheets.
Wow. 16
different separate ideas for bills. And we're just kind of, Robert's doing it skill, but I'm bumbling and fumbling. And we find out from the staff, hey, you guys really got to focus on the two most important ideas you have. Things move fast in the Capitol. So boil this down and figure out the two most important ideas, and then, we'll talk about it. So another thing happens that's a milestone. We actually get to talk on the phone and in person. Karen and I are at the Capitol.
And Karen is your wife?
Karen's my wife. We are going to have this phone conference because the good-hearted attorney agrees that he'll do it by phone. So that's a big wow. And two of the staff members going to be present are lawyers, and one's on the Public Safety Committee, the other's on the Judicial Committee. So that's another wow. And so it's worth the attorney's time. I've heard $400 an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
And this attorney's right on the front lines. Mm-hmm. So he wants to participate. Mm-hmm. So our movement, made up of a few people, and they're not all Jehovah's Witnesses. We're appreciating getting advice from them too, but I won't tell you all that. So we have several people on the phone listening. John Redwood's one of them.
And John Redwood from JW Survey, just in case anyone is not familiar with that.
Right. Well, he was also at that conference in London. Mm-hmm. So, all these people are coming together. It's common cause. Mm-hmm. So we're at the Capitol, and the attorney and the three attorneys, it was their show, and they start talking. And they're using words, I don't know what they're talking about, right? And sometimes I don't know if I even pronounce this right. Codify or codify California law. But I'll tell you in layman's terms. From that phone conference, the bill got focused on clergy penitent privilege, the California court decisions, and the First Amendment right arguments. So what institutions have been saying in court, and we have some court cases we want people to do some more research on, but there's endless litigation. That was another thing I said in that clip. There's been endless litigation on clergy penitent privilege and First Amendment rights. The two serial pedophiles, you can go from the 60s to present day. And as I mentioned, the good news is California courts are ruling against the First Amendment argument that clergy penitent privilege includes everybody involved, everybody in the institution.
Right.
So now your audience is mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, so let me put that in terms of the Jehovah's Witness system and how this bill would positively affect that. And
in reference to the other organizations, the other religious organizations, the clergy penitent privilege refers to privileged conversations between a member of clergy and the penitent, who would be the person who comes to confess a sin on their part. So this is something that religions have been using for decades, as you've mentioned. Now, as it relates to Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, your audience would be more familiar with this. Okay, the sinner, mm-hmm. who is the penitent, And there's all kinds of religions that take this clause
Mm-hmm.
and run with it. And they're kind of have the same argument in courts. But all those religions are losing those court cases. Erwin Zalkin has the files in his office because of these kind of rulings. Nope, it's not First Amendment rights. So there's tangible results, but this battle's been raging for quite some time. So in the Jehovah's Witness system, the person that, let's say he's a pedophile, and he wants to go to an elder and say, I'm a serial pedophile. I've done this with 6 other people in the past, and I'm doing it today, and I want to get right with God. That's not the way a witness would put it.
Right.
But other religions would. Well, that elder in the system then supposed to go to the chairman of the body of elders. I don't even know if that's the current designation.
I think the coordinator of the body of elders.
Yeah, coordinator of the body of elders. Okay. So in the system, which is still true, he's supposed to go to the coordinator who calls a body of elders meeting. Okay, so now it's not just the penitent and the priest. It's the chairman of the body of elders, and it's all body of elders that are making up that meeting, and they say, we need to form an investigative group, and it's usually 2 elders.
And of course, in this situation, the clergy penitent definitely would not apply because all the rest of those elders did not receive that confession.
But in court, they've been successful, and then when they're going to lose, they settle. And so all this effort, and it stifles reporting. Who wants to go through all of that? And that's the same with sexual harassment. Who wants to lose their job and be punished? So a lot of times people don't report it, and they still lose their job or whatever. So these are where this culture can change and it can benefit everyone. But California's taking it on, and it's great.
That is great.
So now you've got, besides just the one sinner and the priest, now you've got the body of elders, plus you've got 2 brothers that investigate it. So they go out and they interview everybody. And what the Watchtower does in court, and then they call the legal department, talk to the service department.
So that's more people.
It's all kinds of people. So it's like what we're trying to say is time out here. We can live with the penitent and the priest.
The one-on-one.
But anything other than that, that's no longer comes under that privilege. So that's the gist of the bill. So the problem is, and you can go into these details between James Henderson and Gonzalo Campos. Could you say that? Make sure I pronounce that right.
I see. Yes, Gonzalo Campos.
I did it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so those 2 serial pedophiles span a time from the 60s to present day. And I didn't go and get the exact numbers, but I'm thinking between the 2, they probably have 18 known victims.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And with James Henderson, many of those court cases were settled. And this is part of when I go to talk to the people at their carts, I say, I used to do what you do until I discovered things that were hidden from me. And I want to tell you, when you see these hidden things, I just want to tell you that there's life after being a Jehovah's Witness. It's painful, as you know, and as I know. So that's part of what I do when I go talk to people. And I will go into that in another video. So what we want to talk about, especially your audience in California, is what they can do to help this bill get passed. And it's exciting because Senator Beth Jackson submitted this to the Office of the Legislative Counsel. And it passed that hurdle. But what we still need is what they call a sponsor of the bill. So 2 things that can be done by California residents. They can call Senator Jackson's office, and her phone number and details will be on the Facebook page. And they could thank her for doing that, submitting that bill to the council. And Robert's got this all organized. It's all spelled out. There's phone numbers. There's ways to get it. There's samples of what to say on the phone. He's really made it simple. It's just the importance of it. So thanking Senator Jackson for her actions, and then calling your representative and saying, I appreciate this bill, and I would like you to go to Senator Jackson's office, and then you refer to the bill number. And
yes, and the bill number is
here it is. Here it is.
Right.
And you'll see
RN.
it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Why don't you read it?
Sure. So the bill number, and again, this is for California residents that can actually have an impact on this particular bill that Roger is discussing. It is RN as in Nancy, 1803892.
And just the way that they do things, the bill is not printed. You have to go and get authorization to see what the bill's about. But if there's a lot of interest and the senators realize that people would like to support this bill, it will go a long way in the process of getting it done. And all of us would be very happy if we knew that when the elders called the legal department wouldn't hesitate and say, you as a clergyman in your situation have to report that to the police. End of discussion. See how much misery would have been stopped if that would have been done before James Henderson.
Roger, I really want to thank you for coming out and for speaking to all of us about some of the exciting initiatives that are currently taking place. And not only that, how you, the viewers, can actually get involved with this. This is about enacting some legislation, actually trying to create a situation that makes it to where some of these horrible child abuse situations that we hear about within the organization can be lessened or hopefully stopped because of the laws that will be in place that Roger and the rest of us are working on. And again, this is specifically for residents of California at this moment, and hopefully it extends to other parts of the country and essentially and eventually other parts of the world. I would like to actually make an appeal also to YouTubers, to anyone who has a platform. Even if you're not a resident, you personally are not a resident of California, a lot of your audience undoubtedly is. So if this is something that you can also mention, that would be a great help to Roger and the efforts that he's making to be able to actually affect some sort of change. So I'm going to urge all of you, especially California residents, to look at this Facebook page for the initiative that Roger is very heavily involved with. And the website is www.facebook.com/scars.ca. And that is scars with 2 A's. So it is SCAARS.ca.
Can I just add to the audience
Sure.
that there is a time frame. The window of opportunity to influence the legislator to show that you'd be supporting of this is February 16th. That's the cutoff date for authorizing or putting a bill on the books. So if you could take a look at this, if you're comfortable with it, some 5-minute phone conversations, emails, all of it would be appreciated. And don't forget to call Senator Jackson's office and thank her for her efforts regarding that bill. And we very much appreciate all the support that we can get. It's actually the goal of many of us that are in the activism advocating role that we want to have occur. So the more you learn about this, I think the more excited you'll get about it.
Absolutely. And I was noticing on the information that you brought over, it says to actually contact that member before February 9th. So the sense of urgency is even more pronounced. So this is something that is very time sensitive, as Roger was mentioning. So I would urge all of you to make that call. I know as soon as we get off here, that's the call that I'll be making. And let's try to actually create some change.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share this really important message. And I think you're going to get on board with this network the way you're talking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the more the merrier. If you could want to get in touch with us and help out, Robert and others have some very good practical suggestions. So thank you so much.
And one more thing I might mention, many of you who are watching are former Jehovah's Witnesses, but I would urge you to speak with other people outside of the ex-witness or witness context who are also interested in child abuse laws, because the vast majority of people do want children to be protected from these types of atrocities and do want reporting to happen immediately. So if you could talk to your friends and urge them to make a call, or any family members or anything like that, that would also help out very much. So that's it for this video. In a future video that Roger and I are going to be working on, we're actually going to discuss in a more detailed fashion James Henderson, Gonzalo Campos, Joe Anderson's letter that he was referencing, and just further proof as to why, especially here in California, we need the change in these laws. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you.